Greetings, friends. Kambria Evans here with the Zero Disturbance Podcast. And today in our latest series, Why Women Go to Therapy, we are going to get really curious about why so many women are feeling so seen and so good with the latest fad going through Instagram and now in the New York Times, on many talk shows, this movement of the We Don't Care Club. This is created by Melani Sanders. Her handle on Instagram is just being Melani. She now has 1 million followers. And the entire purpose of this club is that we have a perimenopausal, menopausal woman talking about all the things we don't care about. We just don't care. And I wanted to give you an EMDR clinician's perspective on why this feels so good. I also wanted to try to help you understand why when people come in and do EMDR and brain spotting with me in my office, it also feels the same kind of good. So in EMDR, we talk a lot about the concept of neutrality. We take a disturbing target and we move it towards being neutral in our minds and neutral in our bodies. Kind of like the feeling of like, we don't care. And Melani's onto something. She really is, because what she is doing is she is embodying the neutrality that women would like to feel by letting go of the responsibilities and beliefs that no longer serve them, and quite honestly, never served them to begin with. What do I mean by all of that? When we do EMDR, we get to think about things that are disturbing and how to desensitize them. And because the nervous system and your brain is so amazing, we can also take things that feel really good, which we call resources, and we figure out how to expand and deepen those memory networks, not just as cognitive thoughts that we're thinking up here in response to something, but we drop them down into the body, so that it just feels true. It just is. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to pull it up and then respond to another part of you. It's just integrated as reality in your body. And this neutrality is something that I love about being an EMDR clinician. It's something I love giving to people. And creating neutrality really, especially for women that I work with, feels like empowerment. Because when you are truly powerful, when you are truly in control of your life and your choices, and you own your goodness, and it's not up for debate, right? All the things we've been talking about in this series, something really cool happens. This is like one of the coolest outcomes that comes from doing EMDR, which is like, we don't care. We don't care. We don't care if you disagree with us. We don't care if you don't like what we're doing or what we're wearing or what we're saying or how we're being, or if we're not doing something, or if we haven't been responsible for all the things you want us to be responsible for. We don't care. Not because we're mean people or not because there's something wrong with us, but because we're neutral. We're totally neutral. And Melani has really capitalized on this concept. She has become a huge resource for women by going on her Instagram account and literally, like, with multiple sets of glasses, a neck pillow around her neck, a bathrobe oftentimes, and just embracing the positive belief that EMDR clinicians love to get to with their clients, which is, I'm fine as I am. And when I know I'm fine as I am, it's true in my body. And so even if I show up on Instagram with 1 million followers in my bathrobe with my neck pillow, okay, we don't care, right? There's nothing up for debate. She goes on to share with all of us her list. She has this really amazing notebook that she pulls out with a highlighter. It's incredible. And she reads us her list. She reads us her list of the things that we don't care about. And what I've noticed as an EMDR clinician, watching her do this now for several weeks, I've been following her and I love watching her videos and feeling her neutrality when I have my morning cup of coffee. What I've noticed is that every single thing on her list that we don't care about, right? directly correlate with every EMDR clinician's list of negative cognitions and positive cognitions. Why is that important? I'm going to tell you. Every EMDR therapist has a list that they use to set up a target. What is a target? A target is in phase 4 of EMDR, and what we ask the client to do is to identify a disturbance they would like to decrease and make neutral, not disturbing anymore. It just is. And when that happens, what we do is we have 4 elements of memory. We typically have an image or a scene. We typically have a negative belief that we're going to move to a positive belief. We typically have a body sensation and an emotion. Put those things together, and it's kind of like creating almost like a telephone wire or like an internet cord, right? Like this is the cord that makes the memory network. This is how the memory is stored. Those 4 elements provide enough of a portal and a runway into our memory networks to see how things are linked. And so when we do EMDR, what we're doing is we're finding the portal through the target. We're going ahead and we're seeing how things are linked and associated with other memories, other narratives, other beliefs, other ages. And we basically just watch the whole memory network just become updated and neutral. And what happens at the end, which is my favorite part, is that we can literally see the client shifting from the negative disturbance into a positive experience, right? Typically, there is a positive belief at the end. Again, not just in their mind, but in their bodies. Let's say we have somebody that runs around with this idea a lot of women have of like, I have to be perfect, right? And let's say they have a target image of being in middle school and being teased about their body, which has happened to so many girls and women. And let's say that we set up the target and we go ahead and start to desensitize and see how it's linked through the portal in the memory networks, right? Updating all of those things into all the things that we know and understand now to get clear about reality. When we get to see that negative belief of I have to be perfect fall into I'm fine as I am. I'm fine as I am despite that incident in middle school, despite all the programming that I've received from the world my entire life as a woman about my body, about my goodness. I'm going to fall into I'm fine as I am. I'm going to feel it in my body. And you know what that is? That is neutrality. Because when we know we're fine as we are, it's almost so neutral it's boring to talk about. And so I really appreciate Melani coming on here and creating this social movement, this revolution for women to articulate not just the words of the list of the things we don't care about, right? But her entire embodiment, her tone of voice is very neutral. We don't care. The way she shows up, she's not put together. She's not polished. She's comfortable, right? And when you listen, it's so fun as an EMDR therapist to do this. When you listen to the things on her list about what we don't care about anymore, it directly hits every single negative belief on the EMDR list for desensitizing. It's brilliant. And that's why it feels so good, because you know what she does? She picks up her list and she just knocks these down like bowling pins. Let me give you some examples. In EMDR, we have 4 buckets of themes of negative beliefs, right? One is all around our goodness. And typically these are true or not true before the age of 5. And for women, these are really, really vulnerable because we don't have enough goodness, cognitions, and messages reinforcing girls as you're fine as you are. So the second bucket is about responsibility. This is the script in our head of, I should do this, I should be responsible for this, it's my fault, something's wrong with me. Women are so brainwashed in this category of EMDR cognitions. So brainwashed, like from birth, about all the things we're supposed to be responsible for. And what I love listening to Melani read the list, what she oftentimes does in this category is to remind us you're not responsible for like half of the shit you do, right? She does funny things about like, we do not care that you are getting your pants and underwear returned to you inside out. That is how you put them in the laundry, and that is how you will receive them, right? We do not care that the fridge is empty. Everyone in this house drove by the same store and chose not to go there. We do not care. So she's really just knocking these beliefs down like bowling pins. She's allowing us to zoom out and say, why do we think we're responsible for all of this? It's funny, and there's something about humor that allows us to take it in. And there's something about humor that I think is allowing, hopefully, men to see this and take this in too, because it's really ridiculous how many things have been put on our plate. And for her to come on and say, we don't care about these things that you've given us in terms of responsibility anymore, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. And I would even go so far to say that these are things that we don't have to care about before perimenopause and before menopause. We cannot care about them forever, for our whole life. This is just the beginning. The third bucket is around safety. And I don't think she directly goes towards this bucket very often, right? But obviously, if we are struggling with our goodness, if we're struggling with feeling overly responsible and full of burdens for other people and caretaking and doing it all, right? Then our safety fundamentally is going to be at risk. Because if we aren't good by someone else's standards, if we aren't responsible and doing what we're supposed to do by someone else's standards, then our sense of safety in terms of connection and belonging is put at risk, right? And there's something biological that happens to us about being in a herd, right? We have to stay with the herd. We have to be accepted by the herd. We have to belong. The fourth and final category that Melani really speaks to in the We Do Not Care Club is this fourth bucket in EMDR, which is all around control, choice, and power. And she does it so beautifully because it is a non-negotiable fact when you watch her content, when you watch her read her list in her bathrobe on her reels. Her tone of voice is just so neutral. Nothing's up for debate. You can really see her owning her power, control, and choice. Because guess what? When you actually have choices in your life, in society, you get to walk around feeling pretty chill. When you actually have control of your choices, of your decisions, of what happens to you, of your body, it's pretty relaxing, right? And the way that she's so neutral reminds us that real power is pretty chill. A lot of my patients that work with me, the women talk about at the end of an EMDR target feeling like quiet power, calm confidence. It's like in my body, I don't feel threatened that I have to get big or loud or yell. It's just true. It just is. And this is exactly the essence that Melani holds in her reels. There's this big conversation around perimenopause and menopause right now that I really appreciate because guess what? I'm almost 45. And when I had sex ed as a kid in public schools, we talked about our periods. We talked about getting pregnant. I think we talked about birth control and sex. No one told me about perimenopause and menopause. No one, my entire life, no one talked about it. And I came from two very big families, one Midwestern and one from Boston. Tons of cousins, tons of uncles, aunts, grandma, no one talked about it. It was not an open conversation like it is now, but it was happening, right? I regularly took care of myself and went to the doctor in my 20s and 30s. No one talked to me about that at my doctor's appointments with female physicians. No one talked about it. And so it feels like righting a wrong that this is a conversation that's happening now. I'm really proud and grateful to the women ahead of me in this process who are naming that A, it exists, and B, what it's like, and C, how we get to change what we do given that phase of our spiritual, emotional, and physical life. I'm very grateful for this. It feels like an act of self-love and feminism that this is happening, and I want to keep the conversation going. There's a lot of people that talk about the decline of estrogen and what that means and why the We Do Not Care Club at this phase of life is appropriate. I've heard that estrogen is called the accommodating hormone, that when we're full of estrogen in our 20s and 30s, we want to be accommodating. We want to be collaborative. We want to take on a lot more and be flexible and kind of put ourselves below others to caretake, to do all the things, because I've heard that estrogen makes us this way. And so the theory is estrogen declining in our 40s, 50s, and 60s with perimenopause and menopause takes away our desire to accommodate. I think that's an interesting theory. And let me tell you what I think my theory is. Hormones aside, I think something really interesting happens when you hit your 40s. And I haven't hit my 50s and 60s yet. I will keep y'all abreast of what that is like as we go along together and learn. But being in your 40s, you realize how wise you are. You realize how much you figured out. And there's something that happens in midlife. You have a clarity about all the programming that you have been given since you were little, your whole life. And you're faced with this choice of, will I continue to allow that or not? For the next half of my life, will I continue to be accommodating? Will I continue to take on more than most men do? Will I continue to be more flexible, more collaborative, more accommodating to other people's needs and putting myself below? Do I want to do that? Because guess what? Most women in their 40s and probably 50s and 60s, they're tired. They're burnt out. And guess what? It's not because something's wrong with them. It's because they are doing more than men. I'm not going to review all the stats. The stats are the stats. Women with children who work typically do much more than their husbands in a heterosexual household. These are the stats. And I think it's amazing that my generation has more rights, or had more rights until recently, than any other generation before us. And so now 60% of marriages end in divorce, and 70% of those divorces are filed by women. And it's not a male loneliness epidemic. What we've been talking about is it is a domestic violence epidemic, because when we all talk about narcissism and coercive control and abuse, that is domestic violence. And so this idea that our estrogen is decreasing and so therefore we do not care is part of the conversation. And I love it. And I want to keep talking about it with all the women that I know. I love having my female neighbors over to my house and hosting girls' nights. We talk about all the things happening to our bodies, all the feelings we have about it. And to only talk about estrogen in this conversation, to only talk about the impact of perimenopause and menopause is not a complete conversation, because there's a lot of reasons why women are done accommodating, are done doing more work than their husbands when it comes to child rearing, when it comes to taking care of the home and working and contributing financially. These are the stats. And I think what's really interesting is that there are a lot of physical symptoms that come with perimenopause and menopause. There's insomnia, there's hot flashes, there's changes in mood. And what's really interesting to me is that while I have not personally gone through all of these things yet, again, I'll keep y'all posted as we go. I like to learn together with you. What's interesting to me is that I did have twins. And postpartum and even during pregnancy, I experienced, like most women, hormonal changes, symptoms of discomfort, insomnia from being up with babies that were not on the same sleep schedule, pumping, breastfeeding, changing, all the things. And it's in those moments that you realize how much you have to do And it's in those moments you realize the imbalance that is happening. A part of all women, I believe, are very aware of having physical and hormonal difficulties after they have their kids and feeling and noticing the imbalance between them and their husbands. Now, this does not apply to everybody, but again, this applies to most women. The stats are the stats now. And as you get over those physical and hormonal changes and difficulties and the insomnia and the late nights with the kids up, it becomes this whole experience of never getting rest and sleep, ever. I mean, I have twins. I don't know any different, but when my kids are up and they're sick, I'm up, right? I'm the default parent. Most women are. And we don't sleep until our kids are years and years beyond birth. So we have all these years of not resting, not taking care of ourselves, caregiving to others because they're more vulnerable. And that's what you do when you have babies and toddlers and small children. That's what you do. That's not up for debate. But here's what's interesting. When women hit perimenopause and menopause, typically our children, they are more self-sufficient. They sleep through the night. They are more independent. And so the part of us that's like, push through, just do it. It's for the kids. There's no other choice. This is what you signed up for. When that part of our lives is kind of subdued and smaller, right? Not as intense and demanding. When perimenopause and menopause comes in and puts us through the same physical challenges, emotional challenges that we've already experienced, what might be interesting to notice is that most women who have had children have already been through that. And we had to be soldiers and warrior on and push through it. But now, in perimenopause and menopause, we kind of have a choice to say, you know what? I am going to have a physical and emotional and spiritual experience that is hard for me. And guess what? This time, I'm not going to take care of everybody all the time. Y'all need to figure it out. I am not going to be who I was when I had to be who I was. And this is what makes this conversation so important, because if women could understand that after they get married and have kids, again, not always, but mostly the stats are the stats, and if they're working, they are likely going to have this common experience that all women talk about when they get together. And that is a battle. It is a delight and it's a battle. And once we get through that battle, some of us say, I'm not going to do that battle the same way again. I'm not going to have a battle happening in my body and then continue to push and push and push myself to accommodate out here. I already did that. I already had my turn. And guess what? It gets to be someone else's turn, or all the things aren't getting done. And every beauty standard that you have about me, I don't care. I don't care. There's so much power. There's so much control and choice in the We Do Not Care Club. And if you haven't checked it out, I really hope that you will. And if you are not yet in perimenopause or menopause, I would invite you to really educate yourself, whether you're a man or a woman, about what that phase of life might be like. Because if you are somebody who would like to protect and preserve your marriage, it is important in a heterosexual couple for both people to be educated about this, to be educated about the impact on women. I think the latest stat that I saw about couples who have cancer diagnoses, I think it was something like men divorce women with cancer 21% of the time. They mic drop, they peace out. Guess what the percentage is for women divorcing men with cancer? It's 3%. It's 3%. So I think it would be wise for any man who is self-identifying as being part of the male loneliness epidemic to get educated really fast. I think it would be wise for the 70% of the divorce cases that are, women file, if they are married to men, it would be wise for those men, before she files, to get educated about what is happening in society right now, what is happening inside of women. And if you are somebody who wants to feel neutrality now, if you want to feel the power, control, and choice now, if you want to get this programming up and online in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, before the baby comes, or maybe you don't want to have a baby and you have to deal with the pressure of that, right? For me, it was like, you will be good once you get married and have kids. Then you'll have this great, successful life. You'll be a whole person. And I hope people aren't telling people that anymore because it's so abusive and so controlling. But if you're somebody who wants to know what neutrality feels like in any of the 4 buckets, right? Goodness, responsibility, safety, control, power, and choice, I would really encourage you to get with an EMDR clinician just to see what it feels like. And if you can't think of anything that you want to desensitize that's traumatic or disturbing, go get resourced, because they not only can decrease your negative cognitions in your mind and in your body, but they can increase the positive ones. And guess what? Guess what, ladies? We have battles to fight as women, right? Not just with having children and going through perimenopause and menopause, but in society. And it is responsible, I think, and self-led and self-loving and protective if we go into an EMDR session and say, I want to expand and fortify all of my positive cognitions on this sheet that you have. I want all the positive beliefs. I want to armor up because the world is brutal for women. And I don't want to get confused, and I don't want to get gaslit or controlled or be told what to do. I don't want to be susceptible to that. And if I have programming in me that confuses me about that, let's desensitize that while we expand all the good stuff. If you are somebody who's really curious about where you are in your positive and negative beliefs of self, I would encourage you to opt into our Zero Disturbance mailing list. The link is below in the show notes. We have got a belief inventory assessment. It's totally free with some other cool free stuff you can check out about EMDR. And we'll get you on the mailing list for the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And I love this inventory so much. I do this with my intensive and EMDR clients because it lets us see what positive beliefs are already online that we can expand and fortify and make armor, right, for our power. And it lets us also see the negative beliefs of self that have been programmed into us by toxic people, whether it's parents, teachers, partners, society, commercials telling us that we're never going to make it in terms of what we're supposed to look like. But keep trying, keep wasting energy on it. We get to see it clearly. We get to see the negative beliefs that have been put inside of us as programming, because guess what? We weren't born with any of those negative beliefs. Those were given to us, and they are not even our own voice. They don't belong to us. We think they are us, and they're not. So what an amazing opportunity we have now, right? EMDR is the doorway to revolution, to self-led living. And I don't know about y'all. I mean, I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and make different decisions. But if I was in my teens or 20s and I knew that this existed and I knew what was coming and what I had already been through as a teenage girl and a young girl, I would definitely be curious about my belief inventory assessment. I would definitely want to get with an EMDR clinician and say, I'm about to go to college, and you know what? Stuff happens there. I want to be clear about who I am and what I deserve, because I'm going to meet a bunch of people that are going to confuse me about it. Let's fortify me. Let's get it lined up. I want to be self-led. And then as I go into the workforce, leaving college, going into my career, I want to do the same thing. And guess what? Before I pick a partner for the rest of my life, if I choose to get legally, contractually married with somebody and involve the government in that, I'm going to be damn sure my positive beliefs and negative beliefs are right and aligned. That's not negotiable for people anymore, given the divorce rate. And let's say you're somebody who does want to have kids. Again, get clear with an EMDR clinician, because guess what? Here's my wish for all of us as women. My wish is that eventually in the future, as much as I love her content and I love watching her reels, and and it delights me. The neutrality delights me. My wish is that we will not need a we do not care club for people in perimenopause and menopause. My magic wand wish is that neutrality, that ownership of positive beliefs and armor against negative cognitions from other people in society, they won't even be up for debate. My wish is that all of those things come way earlier for women. We should not be discovering these things and feeling this neutrality at midlife. We have got to feel these things and know these things in our bodies way sooner. And I'm talking like teens and 20s, if not sooner than that. So this is my rally cry for women, building on the work and the revolution that Melani has started with the We Do Not Care Club. Let's bring it through time and make sure that it belongs to everyone coming before us and coming up into their midlife, and that we can guarantee that every baby born who identifies as female will have this with her entire life. Could y'all imagine a world where women are clear and in their neutrality and in their positive cognitions of self from the beginning? We would not be where we are today. We would be in a very different world, having very different conversations. And I am fully committed to talking about this until this vision is real and we are all living in it and we are all enjoying it together. So with all that being said, I love thinking through these things with y'all. Thanks for listening. And in the meantime, until we're together again, be well.